Well, welcome to Focus Today. I'm your host, Perry Atkinson. Boy, there's a lot going on in the news from, well, hostages being exchanged in Israel and the Middle East and what's happening in Israel and all throughout that part of the world, even all the way back home to what could be happening in the future in the classroom. So excited to have with us, and always a delight, Laurie Cardoza-Moore, founder and the president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. PJTN.org is the website. You can go there and check it out, PJTN.org. He has a heart and a passion and a frontline warrior for not only Israel, but also for your children and what they're being taught in schools. So PJTN.org. Laurie, good to see you. How are you, friend?
Barry, I'm doing well. Thank you for having me on the show. And I just want to give a shout out to your audience, because lately, every time I come on, I get emails from your audience telling me to keep up the good fight. They love hearing about what's going on in Israel and, of course, education.
Well,
so thank you.
Well, hey, look, thank you. Thank you for your work. Thank you for being obedient to your call and not wavering from it. I know your heart.
And you as well. Yeah.
Okay, well, listen, first of all, let me start with the hostages. More and more are being released. What's your take?
Well, there's not enough. As far as I'm concerned, there's not enough of them being released. And I'm a little concerned at the way we're handling this. And of course, the special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his relationship to Qatar. You know, we're a country that does not negotiate with terrorists. So right off the bat, that's my huge concern. Why are we still negotiating with these people? I love what Trump is doing. He's telling Egypt and Cairo, you need to absorb these Gazans, these Palestinians. So with regards to the hostages that are being released, you know, as we look at the hostages that have been released so far, and we know that there are more, and especially the Bibas family, it was heartbreaking to watch the father return this past weekend and him not be returned with his wife and his children. I know a lot of people are concerned about that family, and they almost feel like they're holding out on the wife and the children. So we don't know what the status is, but we just ask President Trump to please put pressure on to release more. You know, we should have had, when Trump said, you know, there's going to be hell to pay, he should have, it's my personal opinion, he should have required that all the hostages be released. All the Americans, all the Israelis, I understand now there's a Russian too that I didn't know about. So it's a horrible thing for Israelis to have to live through, but they're anxiously waiting. They're grateful to President Trump for taking the bold stand. I mean, it could have turned out totally different had the elections turned out different. So we want to keep praying for their release and to expose what Hamas is doing. They need to be removed once and for all.
All right. So Prime Minister Netanyahu is in town. He's going to be meeting with the president tomorrow. Part of the agenda is the elimination of Hamas. And how that may play into a negotiation for the rest of the hostages. Do you have any idea how that may go?
No, I don't know. And I look at what the policies have been, and I try to determine what's going to be the next course of action. I do love that Trump is speaking to the leader in Cairo and in Amman and telling them you need to absorb some of these Palestinians, you know, citing that the United States has given billions of dollars to Cairo and to Amman since the 1950s. So we hope that, you know, we're going to see that Hamas is going to be destroyed once and for all. Because remember, initially when Trump got elected, he was talking about what Israel was going to do with Hamas, that Israel had to finish the job, just like what Bibi said. He was going to, his two most important points that he was focused on was getting the hostages home and removing Hamas, eliminating Hamas once and for all. You know, I looked at the visuals, Perry, of the Hamas terrorists that were acting like a bunch of, I don't even want to say animals because that's being too gracious, monsters. I watched how they were parading the hostages as they were being released, and these animals or monsters were, crowding the hostages when they were being released. It's appalling to sit and watch this. So I'm hoping that Trump is going to allow Bibi to finish the job. Bibi has said that. He hasn't stepped back from that. He hasn't communicated it so much lately, but he made a promise to fulfill those two issues: get the hostages home and shut down Hamas once and for all.
So part of this, Laurie, and I don't want to dwell on it too long, but part of this has got to be Iran. Somewhere, I mean, they're trying to make a peace deal. They're trying to do a ceasefire. They're trying to get hostages home. It's a very delicate thing.
Right.
I heard the odds for every one Israeli hostage or U.S. hostage being released is like 30 to 40 militants being released on the Israeli side. But at the end of the day, the bargaining chip to maybe releasing all of it is putting pressure on Iran. Do you think that's part of the discussion?
I would think that Iran knows that its days are numbered. And I don't know if Iran is in the plan to negotiate to try to get these hostages, finally get, Hamas dealt with. I believe that Trump is going to deal with the issue of terrorism once and for all. And Iran needs to be eliminated. Look at the Iranians. I mean, we're seeing over the last couple of months, Iranians are getting their message out, and they're talking about how they don't agree with their government. So there's a problem in Iran. And, are the people going to rise up to remove them? Are we going to help the people rise up to remove the leaders in Iran? They're the ones who are funding all of this hate that is going on, all this terrorism that is going on. They absolutely must be dealt with. They have to. Israel and the United States has to cut the head of the snake off. And Iran is the head.
Your contacts in Israel, they got to be exhausted, but they're also determined. And even though this is not a good deal for Israel as far as the exchange is concerned, it's the only one that could start the release of hostages. What's your contacts telling you?
Well, our contacts are telling us that Israelis are hopeful. They have been since President Trump. That was the one big thing they were waiting on, to see what was going to be the outcome of the election. And now that the elections are over and Trump is initiating his policies, especially in the Middle East, they're waiting with bated breath. They know that the hostages are going to come home. Bibi Netanyahu was interviewed earlier today, and he made the comment that this meeting with Trump is a testimony to the Israeli-American alliance. And it is, Perry. Unfortunately, the previous administration didn't show the honor and the respect due to our major ally, our only ally in the Middle East. We share the same values, the Judeo-Christian values. And so I think that, that Israelis are hoping with bated breath that every one of the hostages are returned back home, that they are brought back to their families once and for all. And then it's time for Israel and the United States to work together to remove the head of the snake. Iran has to go.
All right. I want to turn the attention to your other passion that God's called you, and that's to be a hawk on what's happening in education. Through you and your organization, you guys have just done a remarkable job on watching what's happening with the curriculum inside schools and school districts. Some of it you've got cleaned up, some of it you're still fighting. But we now have a new nominee for the department or for the Secretary of Education, Dr. Penny Schwinn. What do you think?
Yeah, she has been nominated as deputy, and she is a huge threat to the United States of America, to the future of education in America. Trump has said that he's going to shut down the Department of Education, and I can assure you, Perry, Penny Schwinn is not interested in shutting down the department. She even publicly said that if Trump is going to shut down the Department of Education, she doesn't want the job. Your listeners may be familiar with the fact that Penny Schwinn was the former Commissioner of Education in the state of Tennessee. So I serve on the textbook commission. So I served underneath her in her capacity. And I can assure you, her policies were detrimental to our kids in Tennessee. We are still suffering from Penny Schwinn and her policies. I was calling on Governor Lee to remove her from her position as Commissioner of Education because she was pushing propaganda to our children. We saw curriculum or library books with pornographic content. We found library books that had anti-Semitic quotes in them. So, I mean, this has been an ongoing problem, and it's she was implementing policies. This is what's so concerning. She was implementing policies that were in direct conflict with the laws on the books in Tennessee and federal laws on child indecency laws. But she was never held accountable for that. And now what really disturbs me, Perry, is that she's been nominated by President Trump. Now, I don't think President Trump really knows her. I think somebody close to the president has recommended her to him, and that's why he chose that nomination. In fact, he made the comment when he chose her, nominated her, he called her Peggy Schwinn. And anybody who, if he would have known her closely, he would not have called her Peggy. He would have called her Penny because that's her name. So, she's introduced our children to dark curriculum that parents in Tennessee across the state asked her to please get rid of. And she refused to. She kept using the excuse, oh, it's up to the local. You know what? On the state level, within the Department of Education, as I serve on the textbook commission, we're reviewing textbooks and instructional materials to make sure that they are in compliance with state statutes or state standards. If they're not, they don't get to be used on the local level. So why couldn't Penny Schwinn, in her capacity as commissioner, say, you know what? This curriculum is unacceptable for our children. She has done so much damage to our kids. Our kids can't read. They can't add and subtract. But no, Penny Schwinn is going to push the CRT, the DEI, the SEL, and that's what we can expect that she is going to push in the Department of Education. Now, having Trump, having Linda McMahon as the Secretary of Education, she's going to be the head figure. Penny is just the deputy, but she plays an important role as deputy. And what she did in Tennessee, she is going to execute across the country. She, in her capacity as deputy, she's going to be the one to execute all the policies. She's going to make the recommendations to the Secretary of Education, Linda McMahon, and then she's going to be responsible for executing those policies. So, very dangerous, Perry.
What about your senators from that state in Tennessee? Could they get her removed?
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring this up, because not only have I spoken with our senators to let them know she is dangerous, there are many organizations, conservative organizations across the state of Tennessee who have equally joined in, and they have communicated with their senators. They've reached out to the president to let them know she is the worst choice as it pertains to with Israel and what we're teaching our children. Because, Perry, we've been exposing the propaganda, the anti-Semitic, anti-Israel propaganda in education across the United States. This is in textbooks, not just in Tennessee, not just in Florida, but in every state. And we also know Pearson Publishers is one of the biggest publishers of this propaganda. We will see this type of propaganda try to work its way back into our children's classrooms. In fact, some states, they're still using this curriculum. So we still got a lot of work to do. Another big concern that your audience should be concerned about, Perry, is the wellness checks. One of the things that she was pushing was wellness checks for our children, not just K through 12, but for birth to 18 years of age. She was the commissioner of education. She was not responsible for the health and well-being of the kids. She was only supposed to be focused on education, but she wanted to go into homes to test the children, to check the wellness of the children and the adults. And if a parent refused or gave pushback, that was all supposed to be documented. So she was going to be compiling data about families for the Department of Education, which is none of their business.
I'm a little over time, but let me ask this question, squeeze it in. I mean, Senator Blackburn, being the hawk that she is, you think this would be on her radar?
Yeah, I did speak to her. We all need to call her. She spoke to me, and she told me that she's never met with Penny Schwinn or spoken with her. I provided the information to her, so she knows that this is the fact that she was recommended. People ask me who in the world would have recommended her. Well, it could have been Governor Lee, Bill Lee. I think Bill Gates is probably somewhere in the mix here with Penny Schwinn, because Bill Gates also is very involved in education across the country, especially in the state of Tennessee. He told Tennesseans that he was going to be involved in their education for the next 7 years. Well, we're still feeling the impact of that. We still have a lot of work to do. And again, her policies are not going to be good for America. They're not what we voted for. We sent a message to President Trump, especially those who've been fighting the education and the curriculum issue. And we told them, we want our country back. We want our children back.
All right, let me take a quick break. PJTN.org, that is Laurie's website, PJTN, which is Proclaiming Justice to the Nations. There's a picture of the page. Go there, support her. She's not only a hawk for your children's education curriculum here in the States, been a champion for Israel since day one. PJTN.org. We'll be right back. Hi, welcome back. Laurie Cardoza-Moore is back with us. She's the founder and the president of Proclaiming Justice to the Nation. Website is pjtn.org. Laurie is known for a long time with her advocacy for the state of Israel. Very connected, very passionate, and does great work. And you can go there and support her work there. And she's also been an amazing hawk for the quality and the content of your child's education curriculum. We're talking about briefly the person who's been nominated to become the Deputy Secretary of Education, Dr. Penny Schwinn, and a lot of controversy surrounds her. She was educated in Berkeley with all of those radical views. You got to ask the question, how did she make it this far up the ladder? And if there would be 3 or 4 U.S. senators that say no, that would be the end of it, don't you think?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Perry. You know, it's very disturbing that anyone would have nominated her. And I think President Trump needs to look at who that person was that made that recommendation. That person should be a red flag to his policies. President Trump is trying to make America great again, not destroy America, not keep America and America's children engaged in the same education policies. It's time for us to go back. We need real education reform in the United States of America. Yes, does it start with what President Trump said he was going to do? He said, I'm going to abolish the Department of Education. But after he does that, he needs to call for an emergency review, and this is our recommendation to President Trump. He needs to call for an emergency review of civics and social studies education to make sure that we are not indoctrinating our children with propaganda, causing our children to hate America. You know, when Congressman DeSantis was in office, Perry, you probably remember this, we took the textbooks, we found an anti-Semitic quote that legitimized Palestinians blowing themselves up in a Jerusalem restaurant because they were waging a war against Israeli government policies and army actions. That textbook, which was published by Pearson, that is funded by Qatar, one of the terrorist rogue countries. So we had this information that we showed Governor DeSantis, and he committed at that time. He was so shocked and horrified by the content. He said, I'm running for governor. If I get elected, we're getting rid of the propaganda in the textbooks. We're getting rid of Common Core. And sure enough, that's exactly what he did. And when he called for the emergency review of the curriculum, we were invited along with other organizations like the Heritage Foundation and Hillsdale to review the civics and social studies standards, to make recommendations. And one of the signature recommendations that PJTN made to the Department of Education, to Governor DeSantis at that time, was teaching our children about the role that the Hebrew Bible played in our founding, the role that it played in the form and structure of our government, the role it played in our the drafting of our founding documents. This is so important for our children to learn. It's why we are called a Judeo-Christian nation, because the Hebrew Bible played a major role in the development of this nation. We leave out the impact that Jews have made historically. One of my favorite ones to mention, Haim Solomon, who was a friend of George Washington's. He bankrolled the American Revolution. Had he not bankrolled the American Revolution, America would not be the country that it is today. But he even died without a dime to his name. He gave everything he had to the future of this republic. And we have to teach those values, those things to our children. In Proverbs 31, verse 8, Perry, it says, open your mouth on behalf of the mute in the judgment of all our children. We have, through our education system, have confused our children. And unfortunately, because of the confusion, the propaganda we've given to them, we don't have a strong next generation to pass this republic to. We don't have the luxury of time, Perry. Unfortunately, the time has been squandered and our children are paying for it. It's time that we review the national standards. I'm asking President Trump, please call for an emergency review of the civics and social studies standards. Make sure we are teaching our children. Make sure that the curriculum is not coming out of rogue groups like Qatar. And you know what's really disturbing about that? Qatar is funding Pearson, funding this propaganda, and we're sitting at the negotiating table with Israel right now. What's wrong with that picture, Perry?
Okay, so the other part of this is the president, with all of his flurry of executive orders, he did sign one to eliminate CRT, anti-Semitism, and other things that would be destroying our children's mind as hating America. How does that play into the role of A, getting rid of the Department of Education, and B, basically eliminating a position of Deputy Secretary nominee from her radical views?
Well, the Deputy Secretary is not interested. I mentioned earlier, she said that if Trump is going to shut down the Department of Education, she wants nothing to do with that. She wants to stay as a placeholder. And so the sooner we can get her out of that position, the better. Now, with regards to the 3 executive orders that he just signed into law, or in the 3 policies that he just implemented through signing those executive orders are great. But remember, executive orders are not law. They only will be there as long as President Trump is there. Right. President Trump needs to have Congress implement legislation to reinforce what he is saying, to execute that. That's how we can ensure that the next generation, it would require Congress after Trump leaves. We don't know who's going to replace him, but we've got to think forward. We've got to think ahead. If we can make sure that we get legislation in place and passed, then in order for another policy or another president to come in to try to undo what President Trump did, it will take an act of Congress to be able to do that. And the people are already, America has already spoken. We don't want the garbage that our children have been subjected to. We want to start teaching our children how to read, how to write, how to add and subtract. Our kids are so confused, they can't do any of those things. They're not doing it. They're not proficient. The numbers are horrible. Even in Tennessee, we're 32nd in the nation. Why would President Trump pick somebody out of a state, the Department of Education, out of a state who has crippled our children and their ability to read, to write, to add and subtract? Why would he implement somebody? We should be picking whoever the commissioner of education for the premier state Department of Education. That's who we should be appointing and recommending. I made the recommendation to President Trump. Richard Corcoran from the state of Florida. He was commissioner of education. We were able to get the Hebrew Bible back into our children's education under Corcoran. We couldn't have done that. In fact, in Tennessee, we didn't get the Hebrew Bible. We got a version of it, which is close, which is we're grateful for. But we didn't get the words, the Hebrew Bible. The Hebrew Bible is critical for our children to understand. Okay. That's where it came from.
One other quick question. I'm almost out of time. Do you think that the president is serious about eliminating the Department of Education?
I do believe he's serious. He would not have said it had he not, if he was not. And the fact that he made that comment, he's letting us know this is his goal. So how is it going to impact what Penny Schwinn does? Is Penny going to, rescind her name? Or is she going to stay as a placeholder, hoping that maybe the Democrats will get in 4 years and then she can resume her nationwide agenda to destroy our children and the future of our republic?
So if that happens, if the Department of Education happens, it's kind of like Roe versus Wade. All of it goes back to the states, right?
That's right. And that's where it should be. It should be local politics.
Yeah, good. Hey, good to see you. You're looking good. Let me say to our viewers and listeners, PJTN.org, that's the website. You can get a lot of information there, not only from Israel, but also what's happening in education and curriculum around the country. Check it out. Laurie, you're a delight. Thank you, and an inspiration. Hang in there.
God bless you, Perry. Thank you.
All right, God bless. Bye-bye.